our communities are Android 5.4 and Kotlin Kenya. So these are the channels we use for all kinds of communication with regards to the community. So we have the Twitter accounts for both communities. We do announcements there for events that are happening or any interesting opportunities or things that are going on, like our newsletter for what's happening with community members. We have the Telegram channel also, where a lot of community members use it for probably asking questions when you're stuck. Also, we share our events when they're about to happen there. We also have the meetup page for specifically announcing all our meetups that are happening. We have the YouTube channel. We have all the recorded sessions. For example, probably this session will go to YouTube. Then we also have the Medium. So this has moved to a different platform, but for mostly Medium, we have the newsletter that surely has what's been happening with community members, can be projects, interesting projects that people are working on, open source projects, all that's been happening in the community. So yeah, you can check out the channels if you haven't joined, for example, Telegram. We have monthly meetups. We aim to have them every third Saturday of the month. And then, as I mentioned before, every virtual meetup is recorded and uploaded on the YouTube channel. Then we also do partnerships with companies that probably have a value addition to the community. So in case you have, you work for a company or have I don't know, connections to a company that you would feel like would be beneficial to a community members, feel free to reach out to one of the organizers, and yeah, that would be helpful. Then we are a partner community to Droidcon Kenya, which is an annual conference that happens every year. So I'm going to talk more about Droidcon in the coming slides. Yeah, the other bit is we love feedback. So in case there are other things apart from, let's say, partnerships or the way you're organizing Droidcon, you'd love us to see us do, please kindly also reach out for that. The other bit is we try to maintain quality in terms of the sessions and the meetups we have, from speakers to the interactions. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, there's Droidcon Kenya. So it's happening from 8th to 10th November. So kindly, if you haven't probably bought a ticket, check out the website and look at the different ticket prices that you have there, and get yourself a ticket. There are group tickets, there are single tickets and all that. So check that out and get yourself a ticket. Yes, there's also the call for speakers that's open. I'm going to talk about it in the next slides. The other bit that we have is the Droidcon KE Android application. So it's usually always open source for all the years. So it's the Android application that has it usually has all the sessions that are happening, the speakers. You can use it as a guide for the conference day. You can see the rooms where the talks are happening. You can see the schedule. You can plan out, the favorite sessions that you want to attend. So it's currently open source, and we open it up for community members to contribute. So in case you want to contribute to an open source app, go check out the issues you have on the repo and shoot your PRs there. So you can go to GitHub, check out Droidcon KE as the GitHub name, and then check a repo called Droidcon KE 2023 Android. Yeah, that's the link above here. The other bit, we also love to give shout outs to our community members who've been contributing to the repo. So I'll take this opportunity to recognize everyone who's on this photo. So we have Evans, Chepsi, we have Hannah, we have Jane, have Peter, Haron, Kenneth, Brian, Juma, Mambo Brian, Nal, Kibet, Theo, Kalume, Amos, Jackie, Joel, Martin, Jogu, Emmanuel, Beatrice, Nal again, Jospat, Michael, and Joe. So thank you guys so much for taking your time to contribute to the repo. And yeah, I hope to see more of you guys shoot your PRs on the repo. So what's coming up for the community? We have the September Android 254 Kotlin Kenya meetup, which is the physical meetups that we usually have. More details on that will be announced as we progress. Then we have the Kotlin Kenya September newsletter that Mambo Brian always puts out on what's been happening. So yeah, look out for that. Then we have the Droidette September meetup. So the Droidette meetups are usually virtual on Mondays from 8 to 9. So in case you're not able to probably attend the physical ones, those would be like a good meetup to also like go and learn. So Monday, 8 to 9, and then there are 2 times a month. So you can try check those out also. Yeah, and as I said before, in case you have any feedback, you have any additional thing you feel like we can incorporate in our meetup, feel free to reach out to any of us. So those are Twitter handles. There's mine, Annie Kobia, there's Jackie, there's also Mambo Brian, there's also Kendi, and also Haron. Yeah, and I think without much, we can now dive into the session for today, which is on preparing and submitting abstracts for your talk, presented by the Droidcon team. And maybe before they start, I can mention that the CFP, the call for speakers, is open, and the deadline is Monday 11th, which is next week. So if you're still yet to finish up on your submissions after this session, maybe get your tips and hacks, improve on whatever you have already, and yeah, shoot your application. So yeah, I think that's it about the community. In case of any questions or anything, you can also still reach out. Yeah, so yeah, I'll take this chance to introduce the speakers for today. I'm sharing now, just a minute. Yeah, so so I'll take this time to introduce the Droidcon team. So Michael, the floor is now yours. Michael, Chepsi. Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, Anne. Hi everyone. So we just wanted to share some tips or some things we will be looking at when reviewing the CFPs for Droidcon. It's good for seasoned speakers, but also for guys who are starting out. So Michael Bukachi, part of the Droidcon team. I'll give an opportunity to my co-speaker to speak, Chepsi, before I continue the session.
Hi guys, my name is Chepsi. Yeah, Mike will do most of the talking. I'm on the move, so if you hear any issues, please forgive me.
All right. Great. So I guess I can get started. I don't know if I can have permissions to share my screen. I don't have permissions. Who has the superpowers? All right. Okay. Let me just share my screen really quickly. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Right.
You can see.
Yeah. Text editor.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Great. So, what makes a good proposal or speaker submission document? So there are a couple of things. But before I get down to that, I think I'll start with what makes a bad proposal or call for speakers document. The first, which I tend to see a lot, is one-liners or one sentence. Let me go with an example of a topic. Someone give me a topic. What's popular these days?
Jetpack Compose.
All right, Jetpack Compose. Let's say you are writing a proposal and you have your title. Let's say your title is called Jetpack Compose. And sorry about that. And your description is how to get started with Jetpack Compose. So, and yeah, That's it. You submit your session. This is a no-go. When we review or when we review this kind of talks and we see a one line, we just don't even continue discussing it. It just automatically goes into the rejected list. So one liners are no go. I'll just add one liners. So we do not accept one liners. We want to have an idea of what you will talk about. So you need to summarize, or you need to have at least a paragraph or two short paragraphs to explain what you're going to talk about. Because also at the end of the day, we are not only vetting topics, we are also vetting content. So one liners are no goes on. And that applies for both the title and the description. So let's use this example. How could we improve this submission? The first thing we would look at is that we can improve is the title. Usually, from my experience, it's best to have a phrase or a sentence as a title. Not too long and not too short. We don't want one word or two word titles. We need a short description which kind of like gives us a very small idea of what you're going to talk about. So we've chosen Jetpack Compose. So what's popular in Jetpack Compose? What does Jetpack Compose entail? What is it? What do you want to talk about? Because at the end of the day, it's a very big thing. It's a whole UI toolkit. So there's a lot that goes on. Are you going to talk about performance? Are you going to talk about how to implement a custom component? Are you going to talk about how to test your components? Are you going to talk about the internals of Jetpack Compose? So by giving a very vague title, it makes it very difficult for anyone who's reviewing to actually even give more thought into it. So, okay, what's something interesting in Jetpack Compose that we can talk about? Any suggestions?
State hoisting.
Sorry, state hoisting. Right. Let's say, okay, let's talk about state hoisting. State hoisting. So you can say how to hoist. I'm not sure if that's the right spelling. A state in Jetpack Compose, right? Just this alone, making it into a question or a phrase or a sentence, it gives a reviewer insight into what your talk will be about, as opposed to the first one. Can you imagine the first we get this title, or someone is reviewing a talk and they see Jetpack Compose and they know Jetpack Compose, they've been using it or they've heard about it, but as soon as they read that title, questions start coming to mind. Okay, well, is he going to talk about performance? Is he going to talk about the components? Is he talk about state? What is he going to talk about? So like a good submission should raise as little questions as possible, but also it should raise enough questions to keep the one who reads it curious on your proposal or your future talk. So the second version, how to hoist state in Jetpack Compose, someone who's used it or someone who's heard about state or knows the word state and also knows the word Jetpack Compose, like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know how to do it. Or something I've been struggling with. Let me see what this talk is about. And that's what makes a good title. It's can be a sentence, it can be a phrase. It's short. It should be long or short enough to understand what the speaker is intending to talk about. Something I like doing when I'm writing my CFPs or doing my proposals is adding a bit of sarcasm into it. Let's say, how could we like improve this? You can say state in Jetpack Compose, the do's and don'ts, right? It's the same as the second version, but it's more catchy. It has a bit of flavor, like on a chumvi. It has a bit of salt and spices to it, right? Who can come up with another example of how to rephrase how to hoist your state in Jetpack Compose? Who can give another example?
I'm thinking so maybe something like uh, let's hoist a flag or something along those lines. Let's hoist in compose. We can refine it.
Yeah, right. So it already piques interest when you read such a topic. Like this will make you want to read the description. All right. So if you can, you don't really have to do this. Also, this largely depends on the person who's writing the proposal. If you are into sarcasm, if you like using catchy phrases, it's all up to you. This example is okay, but the other two examples are catchier. Another one we could also write like the state of state hoisting. Just play around with the words in compose, right? You're playing around with what the state in compose, right? And this is something which you can start with or you can finish with. Let's say you are writing your CFP in a document, Word document or somewhere, and you come up with this title, right? Then now you get into your description. Later, after you write your description, you can come back and say, oh, by the way, I need to improve my topic. I need a title. I need to make it more catchier. So now you can start playing around with words, knowledge you have. Let's say maybe it's a talk which is being given to a local community. You can now start using that information to actually put it in the title. Let's say it's being done in Uganda. You can start thinking of words or things which are unique to Ugandans. Because usually even for every CFP review, there's usually locals involved in that review process. So even if there's someone international on the team who's doing the review, the locals will get it, and maybe if they have to explain like, oh, by the way, this is actually quite funny, then they can give a backstory and it actually brings points or grazes like the score on your proposal. So that's the title. I don't know if there are any questions, just leave them in the chat, or I don't know if this is the time for QA or we do it after. I'm not sure. Is it the time for QA or we'll do it after?
Michael, you can choose how to go about it. Maybe if there are related questions, you can pick them, but there are no questions yet, unless maybe there's someone who has a question who wants to raise their hand. But on the chat, there are no questions yet.
All right. So we've talked about the title. Now we go into the description. So as much as you have a catchy title, the most important part for a proposal is the description. It has to give the reviewer enough information about what you're going to talk about. It should not give out everything, but it should give them enough. So one, we already said no one-liners. If we see a one-liner or if anyone says a one-liner, that automatically goes into the rejection pool. Other things to pay attention to, which minor things like grammar. I see this a lot, especially when reviewing proposals, is people don't take time to actually review the grammar and punctuation. For some of us, English is not our first language, but when you're writing a proposal, it's not about writing it in one line and then clicking submit. Remember how we used to learn how when you're writing an essay or a proposal for a business proposal, where you do the first draft, second draft, third draft. You do the same thing with the proposals for a CFP. You want to increase your chances as much as possible, and you do not want the reviewers to struggle reading your proposal. So make sure that grammar is correct. Make sure punctuation is there, it's correct. Also, no one-liners. So in terms of structure, in my experience, what I usually do is I start with a brief introduction about what I want to talk about. Just very brief. Usually it's around 2 sentences. And then I mention what I mention what I'm going to what I want to talk about. Mention what I want to talk about. 2 to 3 sentences. And then I usually have a conclusion. So in the conclusion, you can include things like the target audience, or just like summarize depending on how you want to write your proposal. So we have this topic, how to host state in Jetpack Compose. So how would an introduction paragraph or couple of sentences be? We can go do something like let's say who wants to give an example? All right. Let's say
Maybe something like state. Let's see. State has been one of the most challenging things that I've encountered writing Compose, and then something.
Encounter the while writing Compose, right? That's a very good introduction, right? It first of all, it builds upon what title you gave. One, you're talking about states, you're building upon that. Two, it adds something which is also very beneficial to a proposal. It talks about a personal experience, right? Usually you'd want to talk about something you've used or something you've been researching or something you've gone through, because now you can relate more and actually give more examples. So this is a good example of an introductory statement. State has been one of the most challenging things I've encountered while writing Compose. Another example maybe is let's say managing state is hard. This is no different. This isn't different in Jetpack Compose, right? See, that's another nice introductory statement. Managing state is hard. Someone who reviews this already knows, okay, we are still talking about state, right? And then you can build upon that. So as usual, I say it's okay. It can be 2 to 3 sentences, just a very short paragraph. So I'm not sure what how many sentences are there in a paragraph, but it should be very short. It shouldn't be too long. So let's say with the first example, say state has been one of the most challenging things I've encountered while writing Compose. It's something which took me out. Then you can just build upon it. Like say maybe it's something which took me a while to figure out, and yeah, and just build upon that. And then once you finish with that, you've finished with the introductory statement. In the second example, managing state is hard. This is no different in Jetpack Compose. Then after you give your introductory statement, now you go to the heart of the talk. You have to, in this part you have to give details. You have to give the details of what you want to talk about, right? So you have to like explain. You're going to talk about state, yes, right? But what about state are you going to talk about? You have to give details. You don't have to talk about everything you're going to say in your talk, but you have to give enough information that if someone goes through your proposal, be it in the review stage or if your talk gets accepted and it's posted maybe on under the sessions, they would say, but I want to go for this talk. This is something I'm struggling with, right? So this way you go into the heart of the talk. For my talk, I want to talk about managing state. That's like a brief introduction of or an overview of what your talk will be about. I will dive deep into state hosting. I will also talk about how the best let's say data structures you can use to represent state, right? So you're given enough details for someone who's going through your proposals to actually understand what you're going to talk about, and this is very, very important. A lot of time. Sorry.
And then maybe you can also add something like the advantages of the hosting.
Yes. advantages, disadvantages, of let's say the said approach. Maybe you are using a very specific approach, right? It has a name, and it's something maybe you discovered, or it's something which you use on your day-to-day workflow. Whenever you're doing these kind of talks, especially which are based on metrics, it's always good to actually provide pros and cons. Like if you are going to talk about like maybe introducing a new library, let's say a new linting library or a new Android plugin, right? You can say maybe for my talk, I'm going to talk about XYZ plugin. It's a new plugin which is purely in Kotlin, which which was introduced as of version XYZ. It offers. I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using this plugin. I'm also going to talk about my personal experiences when and the do's and don'ts. Right? You are given a very good background or a very good overview of what you're going to talk about, and this is very, very important. Imagine if we stopped the description at this. For my talk, I want to talk about managing states. You've given a very good title, you've given a very good introductory statement, and then in the description, you say, for my talk, I want to talk about managing state, or it's not even there in the first place. Okay, it won't be rejected outrightly, but then it won't be prioritized. And no, remember when in a CFP, you want to make we want to speak at the session, right? So we want to do the most so that my session or our session is accepted. And this, or leaving it halfway, will put it in the maybe stack or maybe column. So make sure you give a very complete yet brief summary of your talk. And then in conclusion, you always want to say at the end of you want to give expectations. So sometimes it's not just about giving a talk. It's also you should have an expectation. When someone goes for your talk, what should they understand by the end of your talk, right? So always for the conclusion, it's usually one sentence or two sentences. Give expectations. Let's say something like along the lines of, at the end of my talk, the audience should be able to tell, should be able to understand state and the different approaches to managing it, right? In Jetpack Compose.
Yeah, I think you can also be playful with the conclusion part. You can say something like, at the end of the talk, guys would have joined the hosting states bandwagon or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would have joined, sorry. Hosting state bandwagon, right? So by that, you are allowed to use humor and sarcasm and all those components of the English language when writing a proposal. Just don't make it too complex. Don't give us a quote from a book which you're the only person who's ever read. Use common examples. You can spice up your proposal. Just remember that it should always have an introduction, it should have a body, it should have a conclusion. And those three components are very important. By using this structure, I think I've only gotten one rejection in all the proposal, in all CFPs I've ever done since I began my career. So it's very, and it's something I also learned from someone else. It's a very simple structure to follow. Have your introduction, have the body, have your conclusion. Add humor to it. Make sure your title is also very self-explanatory, but also enough to make sure the reviewer goes into the body or the description of your talk to understand what you're going to talk about. And this is very important irrespective of what topic. whether you're going to do a very highly technical talk or whether you're going to give something which is more into along the lines of community. It's always a very good structure to follow. It works locally, it works on international standards. Any questions so far?
There's one in the chat.
Yeah, maybe you can take it up.
So for Kendi asks if I have a full topic, can I reach out to any of the organizers to help write an abstract? Is it guaranteed that one stock will be accepted? So I think for this one, the way we do, and I think Harun is here. The way we do the session submissions is there's like a panel of I think 10 guys or so, and everyone gives a vote on which sessions would be accepted or something like this. So one, yes, it's not guaranteed that your session will be accepted just because you asked an organizer. And then, of course, if you have a cool topic, feel free to reach out to any one of us to help you in the submission process.
Right. Yes. So like, yeah, knowing someone who's doing a review or an organizer does not actually guarantee your talk being accepted, because at the end of the day, there's a very broad panel, and everyone has their own perspective or their own judging criteria to having a good talk. So yeah, it's a very just prepare a good proposal, and there's a high likelihood it'll be accepted. Are there any other questions before we go to the last part?
There's another question. Kendi was asking, what's your take on ChatGPT generated abstracts?
Maybe something. Well, ChatGPT is okay to use, but I think it's important to like give it as much context as possible. Don't just go there and say, "Hey, I want to talk in a Droidcon conference. What should I talk about?" It's okay to say, let's say, you have this title, like how to get maybe the one which was set hoisting in compose. So you can say, how would I rewrite this to suit a better title for an abstract submission, and that's okay. Yeah. Maybe one other don't that I think we need to add is don't make the explanation too long, because also you want the guy in the panel reviewing to just skim through it and get a rough idea of what your talk is about. Don't like last year I think I saw one that had like a whole page of what the talk was about, and I don't think that is ideal even for you as someone who's submitting, because you'll end up using so many words and so much time in writing the abstract.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions. Wait, there's another one. Are there a limited number of proposals one can submit?
No, I don't think they are.
Okay, so one can submit as many.
It's at 3.
3.
3?
Yeah, 3 per person.
Okay, thank you. Then, how simple is your abstract supposed to be? More vocabularies, does it disqualify one from being selected, or grammar issues? I think this has been addressed, like it has to be grammatically correct. Yeah. I think there are no more questions. You may proceed.
The last thing I want to talk about when doing a CFP is ecosystem or situational awareness, right? So right now, every couple of months, there is something happening within tech, or within a very specific ecosystem. In Android, what has been happening of late is, or for at least for the past 1 year, is the introduction or the adoption of Jetpack Compose. So it would make sense to talk about that, or it would give increase your chances to talk about that. Or maybe there's a new library which has been introduced for Compose, which maybe allows you to do something specific. It would make sense to talk about that, right? I'm not saying it's bad to talk about all things. I'm just saying it's more advantageous to be aware of what is happening right now in the current tech ecosystem. So this means you have to do research, right? There is really no reason to start talking about MVVM versus MVP right now, because that, unless maybe you're going to give a very different perspective. But also those kind of talks usually land in a maybe. So when I say maybe section is we have done a review, or reviews have been done for the good talks, but we have not filled the quota of the number of talks we need for the session. So that's when we go to the maybe column. And then at that point, now we start to, like, also go through the whole process again of this remaining talks. Which one is the best, or which top 5 are the best? And we still go back to look at these factors. So now that's when you start considering things like, okay, how many MVVM versus MVP talks have we had in the past? Quite many. Okay. This speaker did not give a good description, but their topic is new, so we'll go with that. We say so that in that case, in that situation, because you chose to talk about a topic which has been talked about a lot, it puts you at a disadvantage. It's not wrong, yes, but then there's certain factors you have to think about when choosing a topic. In fact, some of the best talks I've seen were about topics I already knew, or topics I've had before, but the speaker brought on a very, very different perspective or an angle which was completely new, right? So at the end of the day, that also comes down to things like research. You have to do research. You don't just let's say discover state hosting right now. You've been doing it for a week, and then you go immediately to Droidcon CFP and okay, I'm going to talk about state hosting. A nice proposal, right? You've not done the research. Okay, is it been talked about? How long has state hosting been in this ecosystem? What topics have been done on state hosting, right? It's fine, but then remember also you want at least one of your talks to be accepted, and for that to happen, you have to like really bring in all the arsenal. So that is something to also like really consider. Ecosystem awareness or situational awareness. You have to know what's going on in your industry. This is independent of whether you are a seasoned speaker or just starting out, or whether you are a new developer, whether you're new to the industry or not. You have to be aware of what's going on. You have to do your research, gather as much information as possible, and use that information to prepare your talk. At the end of the day, it depends. It's a game of luck. If you're lucky, your talk might be the top in the maybe, and as soon as maybe there's an open slot, it enters. If you're unlucky, we might have really good sessions for a whole event, which rarely happens actually. But and then your maybe talk is not accepted, or doesn't fall within like maybe the top 20 limit. So so you want to increase as much odds as possible when doing CFP. I'm not sure if Chepsy has anything to add on that specifically.
I think I can add before Chepsy contributes. Yeah, so that is a very good point because once you look at some of the submissions, people kind of don't contextualize what has been happening on the last 2 years. And as Michael was saying, we tend to aim the process to be fair. And if you submit to Droidcon, the same proposal that you submit here and maybe try to another international conference, our aim is usually to, if you accept it here, it can be accepted anywhere else. And the other thing I've seen people do, I think we have people who want maybe to do their very first maybe sessions or technical sessions in Droidcon KE, which is not bad. But we have people trying to bring like some of the introductory topics. Let's say there was an API that was introduced like 7 years ago. In as much as it's still used, I think for the Droidcon kind of events, if you check both Droidcon Kenya and other Droidcons around the world, we have like a number of them. You'll find, rarely do you find like introductory topics. And if you are supposed to introduce, let's say, something, you try to bring it in a fresh perspective. Maybe you are trying to play around with that library and found out some new customization things that are very helpful as an Android developer or as a software engineer. So that's how you bring such topics. But trying to maybe introduce, for example, we all know we use Android Studio. Maybe trying to do like an introductory topic for Android Studio won't cut it for the panel, because they're also looking at topics that will bring like a fresh perspective to all these developers. So you'll find if you say like introductory to Android Studio, even if you have all these things that have been stated here, your session won't be chosen. And I've seen like a lot of people making that mistakes, introducing like libraries and all that. I think, as I've said, it's not bad to introduce them, but if you have new insights, for example, you've been using Room, I think it's been there for quite some time, and you have like new insights on how to better maybe save your data and maybe improve performance and all those things. We are looking for such kind of talks and not maybe the introductory ones. Over to you, Chepsi.
From the chat, seems like Gypsy has just dropped off for a few minutes. Maybe he's coming back.
Okay.
So maybe you can pick the questions on the chat as we wait for Gypsy. Yeah, so there's one last one. Are other talks, someone asking, are other talks, are they only mobile or other talks are expected? For example, Flutter, I think for Flutter guys.
Since it's a mobile focused conference, then priority will be given to mobile talks. So again, this comes down to situational awareness. You might have a very different perspective on maybe using a specific framework, but then maybe let's say you're going to talk about like desktop or maybe cross-platform, right? It's a good talk. Yes, it meets all the criteria. But if there are better mobile talks or mobile focused talks, then then those are the ones who should be prioritized. And this is irrespective of the tech stack which you're using. So you can do that, but then that will be a gamble. Like, remember, we don't know how many quality talks we'll get or how many good talks we'll get this time. So if we get enough good talks or more than enough good talks, then automatically you've put yourself at a disadvantage, right? So that's why that's one of the reasons why you have actually like 3 slots. So maybe for the first 2, you can ensure by this I'm going to be my which are going to be like focused on the conference, but then my third one is going to be like, I'm going to wing it to this one, right? So you can do that, but prioritizing the non-mobile focused talks first is a gamble. It can pay off, it might not, so it's up to you.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for that. So there's someone who's asking if we can consider recording the talks at this year's conference, since there are multiple, let me see. Since there are multiple talks happening simultaneously, will that happen? I think Harun can answer that.
Why are you bringing the hard questions to me? But I think our position is, if we if we get like enough funds that cater for organizing the whole of recording the events, I think we will do that. And if not, I think we don't normally record. I think it's not a promise. Again, if you know maybe of a company that can sponsor us in doing the video recordings, we're happy to collaborate with them.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah, I think I've seen one from Katie. Can a speaker recycle previous talks, or do you allow the same topic from the same speaker more than once?
Again, situational awareness. You want to put yourself at a huge advantage. Okay, look at this from this perspective. Assuming we have, let's say, 1 or 2 or 3 people reviewing a talk, and they come across a talk which they know you've given at another conference before, right? Remember also, at the end of the day, even for speakers, for reviewers, they are looking at talks they would want to sit in or attend, right? Maybe the attendees. So doing that actually puts you at a disadvantage, because I saw this talk in GDG Nairobi, or I saw this talk in this other session. So for me, I'll give it a no, right? And the more people do that, the more you lose your chances of actually being accepted. So as much as it's good, or you can do that, I wouldn't recommend it per se. One, because I feel like it's coming up with a talk is not as hard as long as you just give it some thought. If you give it a bit of thought, you can come up with a good talk, or you can at least variate it or change the title, and change the abstract, right? The structure of how to give a talk. So let's say maybe in this Droidcon Uganda, you say how to hoist it in Jetpack Compose. You come back to Droidcon Kenya, you switch it up a bit, you change the title, you add a bit of sarcasm, and you know what? It's a new perspective. So yes, you can recycle talks, but then also you have to be really smart about it.
Okay, thank you, Michael. There's Christopher who's raised his hand. You are free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi. Actually, this is a great talk. I wanted to say thank you. Just asking for Droidcon, how long? I just had I had a small fall, so I've been out for a bit. How long do we have to send our CFPs? And if we can send more than one, so that you guys can pick the best out of what we have. And do we need to tag them in terms of what is this thing called? My English is bad. Ugumu. So if this is a beginner talk, this is intermediate talk or advanced talk. So things like that. Thanks.
Okay, Christopher, thank you for asking that question. So far, we have 4 days. We'll be closing the CFPs on the 11th of this month, which is next Monday. So you have till Monday to submit your talk. 2, you can submit more than one talk, but you're limited to 3 talks only. And 3, you have to tag your talk and show whether it's going to be an intermediate talk, an advanced talk, or a beginner talk, so that we can know how to prioritize them, or how to, when we are listing the speakers that will be speaking at the event and the kind of talk they'll be giving. And also for our attendees to can be aware of their level of expertise that they need to attend that specific talk. Yeah. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions?
I see quite a few in the chat.
Okay.
You
can't see it.
Okay, can a speaker buy a ticket, or once they talk is selected, it's free for them? Harun?
Yeah, I think on the CFP, the event fee is free for speakers. So if you have probably a ticket, you can always write to the speaker's email, I think, and then you'll be able to be either refunded or organize on how maybe the ticket can be used.
Okay, I am seeing also, are you sponsoring travel for accepted talks?
A big no.
Yes, so for speakers, they have to handle their own accommodations and travels. Okay, this is interesting. Why should I consider submitting a proposal in the future? Who wants to answer it, or do I answer that?
Go ahead and
You can
answer.
Okay, I think I should I could counter that with another question: is how do you develop the art of public speaking on specific topics? If you can answer that question, then yeah, that's why you should submit talks. It allows you to develop public speaking. You could see, if you follow any specific person in tech or any speaker, you can see how they evolve their speaking ability over time. The more conferences they do, the more talks they give, the more confident they get speaking publicly. They are now able to do certain things they're not able to do in the past. Also, it's something which is very useful in developing leadership qualities or leadership skills. So yeah, so that's that's why you should submit a CFP. It also allows you to give a good proposal, because it also goes beyond speaking. Let's say you are being onboarded on a project and they ask for a proposal. How would you go about it? So it also improves your writing ability.
I'll just want a second. Michael's points are very, very key. Most of us developers overlook our soft skills, and more and more now, as we work in multidisciplinary teams, it becomes very important to be able to explain and present. Any of you guys, if you're doing your own startups and stuff, you'll find ukiulizwa maswali na wase, you'll find it's more and more important um, to confidently explain what you're doing, especially in terms of tech. If you're dealing with any designers, it's good to explain so that they can have empathy and give you stuff that you really need and stuff that you can actually translate to code. It's a really good. I don't think people network as much as they should. You'd be surprised of who you're talking to, and it's just your peers. You can get kabla niingie Flutter, Chepsi alikuwa amejaribu kunisaidia nisome clean architecture ya Android, lakini nikakataa. Like if we don't share information and skills and knowledge on ourselves, like we're going to get overrun by people in other countries. Nigeria, they share their stuff well. Guys from India always share their stuff well. And the global market, there are more and more opportunities now that are coming for Kenyans to work remotely for Kazi with people abroad. So sharing talent within yourself, building networks like solid networks, learning from each other is really important, and that I see not as much. Trying to get I won't say old, and ni ubaguzi if I say old. If you get more seasoned guys to let you know how they made it, how they hacked it, and they share that information with you. Like it's a great thing. I don't think we network enough, and these conferences kind of should push for that. So again, that's my 2 cents. I don't want to go on a tangent. Mi mkiniacha niongee nitaongea mpaka mtachoka. But just network amongst yourself. Try to share opportunities. If you guys are working in companies and then in need of talent, it's really great if you could get speakers to network, attendees to network. That's how we move and we progress as a community. I'm sorry for talking too much. Some of the times I just ramble. Poleni sana.
Thank you so much, Christopher, for the insights, your 2 cents on that. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, probably I can also give some perspectives and probably on why you should apply. One thing to note is Droidcon is like a global series of events. It's in 25 cities. It's not only us that organize Droidcon. So this is only for Kenya. We have like Droidcon Berlin, San Francisco, and all others. And I think with that being said, it gives you like this international platform for you to give your sessions and in a more professional setting, in that if you give a session at Droidcon, it will prepare you to give sessions in other kind of Droidcons or other kind of international events. And I think that is also important as we are growing these speaking skills. It's also important for us to know how to also speak beyond our, I think, motherland, or go beyond the comfort zone. So I think for those who are not aware, I think Droidcon is normally like a global event. We just organize the Kenyan version of it, but we have other Droidcon around the world. And if you happen to maybe be in a city that they organize, you can be able to see what kind of event it is and what kind of calibers are set. And we try to ensure that all our speakers and all the sessions meet that criteria from the evaluators that we have. And also trying to make sure that if you present here, you are also ready to present in anywhere else, because beyond speaking at our events, we also strive to make sure that we share this knowledge to all over the world, because I believe we as developers, especially in the sub-Saharan continent, we can have unique solutions and which the whole world is not aware about. And if we know how to speak well about them, I think it opens more opportunities for us all.
Okay, thank you so much, Harun. Any more questions or tips, insights before we close? Anyone?
There's one by Esther. Can one person have more than one talk selected?
I think Harun can answer that.
I think Theo answered well. I think if you have like both interesting and quality submissions, it can be a yes, but depending, we normally try to ensure that all the sessions that have been rated highly have a slot. And I think most of the times, because we have like a lot of submissions, if you check on our socials, last year we had over 133 sessions that have been submitted. So it's normally rare for us to get like one person speaking twice. The only thing we do is, because we have like a community day, you can have like a speaker speaking at community day, which is a whole different organization than the normal sessions, so that we can be able to give equal slots to all the sessions that we have accepted. But if we have like enough spaces, I think we can, but we've never had like enough spaces still, I think for the last 3 events that we've organized.
Okay, thank you. I hope, Esther, you've been answered. Mambo, are there any more questions on the chat?
Yes,
Is React Native talk session invited?
Yeah. Any mobile focused framework works. So React Native, Kotlin, Ionic, the whole shebang. Yeah, it as long as it's a good quality talk, it will it will be accepted. I'm saying this with a lot of pain, but yeah, it will be accepted.
I think the catch is trying to make your session. I think since primarily we have the Android, Flutter, and Kotlin stacks dominating, but if you have like a topic that is outside the mobile like criteria, I think the catch is normally trying to make sure these are the principles that all software engineers can apply. For example, how do you lead teams and all that. We have slots for general talks that cut across all the stacks. So if you have like a React Native and how maybe you are consuming API, Android and maybe iOS APIs using React Native, I think that helps maybe it's something that can be fresh insight for the conference. So that is normally the criteria we use for other topics, but we are happy to also adopt other talks because as we are evolving, I think it's becoming less of an Android conference and to a mobile conference now because we have many more stacks coming across.
Thank you, Harun, for the clarification. Any more questions? Because actually we are almost, I think we've gone way above the time we were supposed to do this presentation. Okay, I think there are no more questions. So without any further ado, I'll just make a few announcements before we close. Just a reminder, the Droidcon Kenya conference will happen on the 8th to 10th of November. So save those dates in your calendar or somewhere. And then the CFS link is on the chat. The CFS link, the link to the open source app and the events ticket and the link to the tickets are on the chat. Again, a reminder, the CFS will be closing on the 11th of this month. So please, if you're planning on sending your abstract, do so before or by then. Also, don't forget to buy your tickets. That is if you're not planning on being a speaker. Right now, the tickets are at 3,000 for a standard ticket. And if you're a student, the tickets go for 2,500 and they will be going up as we approach the event. So the sooner you buy the tickets, the better. And you're also free to contribute to the app. So you can practice on your Android development skills by contributing to our open source app. And I think that's it for our today's event. Since this session has been recorded, we will post it on our YouTube channel and we will share the link on our socials. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for attending. You are all free to leave. Thanks.